Story time, Slick Rick. Anyhow, I wanted to bring up a story and how important listening to your intuition is and to cultivate and develop intuition. It's a gift that we're given from God, right? And it's a way that we have a connection to the divine in the universe. We often overlook it. We often go outside of ourselves to look for something that we could find inside answers. And the problem with that is, one, people don't always have the best intentions for you. So they're going to intentionally lead you astray. And it always won't be presented that way, because if it were so blatant, you wouldn't listen, right? It could be for whatever reasons, jealousy. They might not even intentionally be doing it. But again, I've touched on this within Facebook, and I think I put a post about the Ash line conformity test and why it's important not to follow majority. Unfortunately, nowadays, that's all people do. You see it with like how everybody's follows. You have somebody that does something on TikTok, and then you've got billions of other videos doing the same exact thing. Nobody's using their own creativity or creating their own content. They're all like basically just sampling the content of others because it's what worked. But the thing that worked about that was the authenticity of it. So that just becomes null and void. Anyhow, a lot of times we overlook our intuition, and you don't realize how important it is to follow your intuition because of the impact of following that the little voice inside can have on somebody's life. For instance, let me put this into perspective for you and how this all like ties in together. Hopefully it'll make sense. It may not, because there's a lot that goes on in here and it doesn't always come out fluidly or it doesn't always make sense, but it'll click for the person that's supposed to hear it. And if it doesn't, don't worry about it. It's not for you. So basically, years ago, I used to live in Asbury Park when I was from about 18 to 19. I lived with an ex, and it was just like a horrible, horrible time in my life. It's not something I would ever want to relive. And if you see right here, I have a lovely little scar from it, from getting hit in the face with an ice beer can, to always remember how horrible that time in my life was. So it's not somewhere I would ever want to go back to or revisit. It was just a nasty place when I lived there. They built it up a lot now, don't get me wrong, but back when I was 18, it was a shitty place. Really bad. Like, there were jump out boys, there were crackheads everywhere. People would try to like climb in your window, hookers on the corner. They would even like put the lights to flashing like at night so that you can go through and not have to stop and get robbed. They would put Ocean Grove would put the gates up. Anyhow, hopefully long story short, not a place I would want to revisit, So I wanted to go to the beach a few years ago, and I hadn't been back to Asbury Park in over 20 years since I had like the bad experiences I had there. So I was going to Red Bank, the beach over there, and because I had a good time with my family earlier that summer. So I was like, oh, let me go there. For some reason, I get to exit 109 on the Parkway, and I decide to turn my GPS off. And I said, no, I'm going to go to Asbury Park, Ocean Grove. And I'm like, that's weird. Why the hell do I want to go there? I don't have good memories from that. So I was like, all right, you know what? Fuck it. I said, maybe it's time to say, like, screw you, whatever happened there, it doesn't affect me anymore. It's in the past. So I said, all right, I'll go. So I went. It was beautiful. I had a great time. I didn't speak to anyone until I was leaving. Now I'm leaving and I spoke to this lady, Joan, and Joan starts talking to me and she mentions that her husband is sick, right? And I said, okay. And it said to me, ask her. Tell her about your grandfather. So I asked about her husband and I told her all about my story about my grandfather and what I went through with him and how many times I just wanted to give up and how horrible it was for me and how much better I'm doing now after he passed and everything, and I grieved. And she started crying. She just started crying. And I looked at her and she goes, you know what? She goes, I prayed today. I prayed today because I didn't know what to do anymore. And she said, I didn't know if I could do it anymore. And she said, I asked God to send me something, and he sent you. See, somewhere I didn't want to go because I just had a bad memory, but I listened anyway and went. And something so small of me just speaking to a woman had an effect on her. And that brings me to something that's important to me is you can't really see it, but I have the butterfly effect, chaos theory over here. And it's basically what chaos theory is, sensitive dependence on initial factors, or sensitive interdependence on initial factors, something like that. Basically, in layman terms, like it's the ripple effect. You don't realize the little things that you do have an effect on people, and a lot of times God will use you in ways that you have no clue that you're being used until after the fact. But if you listening is important. To see, that was intuition. I had no reason to go back there, but I listened and I made a difference. Just the fact that I went through a struggle and made it out somewhat, somewhat made a difference in somebody's life. She said, now I have a reason to go on. So it's important not to listen to what everybody else is saying or everybody else is doing, but to cultivate your own relationship with God. And the way you do that is to listen to your intuition. Listening is so important. Very important. Have a good day.